See, I see that as really freeing. That if you fail, it's on you type belief. I find that really freeing because I don't see failure as the end. I say this often on podcasts and things, but I see failure as first attempt in learning. I don't see it as that's it, you failed, so you're shit. I see it as, like, okay, what can I learn from this? So whatever happens, it's a good thing. If this fails, that's cool. I'll go back and do something else. I'll find a way around. I'll find the solution to that problem. That's good. That's information. I like that. Let me fail quick and fail often, and learn all this learning early, so then I can, have my success later on, or whatever you perceive as success. And if it goes right, then actually that's fantastic as it is. I do think though. I do think you do have to have your plan Bs, because actually if things don't work, we have mortgages, we have families, we have to be sensible of these things as well. And I suppose that's the other part of it. I mean, for me, it's a wonderful thing. I love it. But for some people, they have everything they want in their life just by working their job in Tesco. And that gets a fair place to that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're living the life you want.
Yeah, of course it is. But I think with me, I mean, you talk about failure. I'm a perfect advocate of failure. I love it. I consume myself with it because I have for so many years sent out scripts after scripts, and I'll get failure letters back and I'll keep them all. But what that does is, one, it helps me learn because I understand, hopefully they'll tell me why it's failed. Sometimes it can't be even asked to tell me why it's failed. But it's an extra push for me, an extra motivation to keep cracking on. And the more failures I get, is, like you say, another step to get into that one successful part. But yeah, you've got to take failure. I find a lot of people, the best people, and reading books and take failure and enjoy it, because not enjoy it, but really don't mind it at all, because the people that I've known in sort of the filmmaking industry and writers and things like that, if you don't take failure, you will not last 2 minutes. You will not last 2 minutes, because people will say to you, you need to change this. I'm not changing that. We talked about change. People will say, it's never going to work. You need to do something different. Well, it is going to work. You cannot have that attitude in this day and age.
I feel for me on that personal level, that's kind of another difference from the early beliefs of hide everything, don't fail, don't show your fails. That was the thing, don't show it.
Yeah.
To go and actually, and I think, I think I'm using this in the right term. I think I am a bit sadistic now in the term of, not in an unhealthy way. I'm not a nutter, as I said earlier on. I think in the way of, like, actually failure, that pain isn't the end of the world. That's kind of like, okay, let's use this. So pain kind of springboards you to the next thing if you can utilize it. If you can change your mind into a growth mindset and always look for the learning, it changes the perspective when you step into a painful situation. Instead of, this is what it is, I'm going to resign myself to being a failure and this is all the end, you'll have a very definite direction in your life. You get to that point and go, actually, I'm going to utilize this. Where's the learning? Where's the key? What can I learn? That really then propels you to the next stage of life. I suppose for me, that trajectory has been a bit of a bell curve, really kind of slow hiding. And then suddenly, the more and more I accept and the more and more I kind of embrace this change and embrace the faults and the flaws and the failures, suddenly you find quite an exponential change in your direction, how you experience life.
And it's quite I don't know how you can explain it. I mean, for me, for instance, if I was trying to send out a script or something like that, and they just said no, it's rubbish, and threw it back at me, it's funny how how I would react is, initially I'd be like, you wanker, you have not got, and then all of a sudden, slowly, I'm like, fuck it, and I'm like, hold on a sec, fuck him, I'll show him, actually, he's not much of a wanker, he just don't like it. And it sort of spurs money. You go through this growth, don't you, where I'm right, I'm going to sort it, I'm going to write another one, I'm going to, so you initially, you're like, shit, I hate you, because you're sort of projecting your failure onto them and blaming them. And then slowly it comes back to you and you actually go, and this is where, I think you should embrace it and go, oh, right then, it is a failure, I'm going to fucking sort it.
There's that lull. I think this is probably the downside of maybe not modern society, maybe just society in general. I think this is a downfall. Those lulls, and what you're saying is so right. That is needed to get your shit together, gather yourself back together, and then go, what am I going to do with this? That process of having a low week or a low month or whatever it is, however long your process is, that is essential.
Yeah.
That's the stuff you need to harness. That's the stuff you need to sort of almost sit in and let it build, let the uncomfortableness build, because that then springboards you into the next step. What we do in our society, I believe, maybe the whole of society, whole of our past, sorry, we don't like that freedom and uncomfortableness. So actually, I'm going to go drink and I'm going to go have sex and I'm going to go, chat to some woman on a chat. I don't know what you call them.
I know nothing about that, Andrew.
Absolutely. It's amazing how much I hear these sort of, behaviours. And it's not that people are bad people. Trolling people on the internet, it's not so much that they're bad people, but the behaviours are giving them an instant relief from whatever angst they have. Yeah. When just accept your angst, just sit in your angst, get to that place. And then obviously there's a difference between depression, because that angst is it's like a sweet spot, too much of a good thing. You can get really stuck and trapped in that tarry treacle. And that is awful. That's horrendous. And you really need support if you get to that place. Yeah. Yeah. But there is a sweet spot of this lull. And if you're in there, utilize it, but yeah, be careful of that sort of staying there too long. If you stay there for months and weeks, months and years, it's not helpful.
Exactly. I like the way you said that about the lull. I like that because, like a perfect example is like me and my wife. We've been together, a long time now. And when we were younger, we'd argue and she'd be right and I'd be right, and we'd argue and we'd clash and we'd fall out and break it. Now we argue. But argue, we'll have a disagreement, let's say. And what I'll do now is I'll step back and I'll have that lull. And I'll think, actually, from her perspective, I try and think from her perspective. I don't think I'm right. And it gives me that chance to just step back and we sort of get through it. Whereas when we were younger, you would not back down. Do you know what I mean? And I quite like that when you're older. You should definitely, that lull, you can bathe in that. You can sit in it and think, actually, aren't I being, observant and complex? Instead of just firing off swearing, I'm actually sitting and thinking about it from your perspective. I'm a good person. And
absolutely,
it's quite empowering.
I often say to my wife when we have one of those bickers, when I've worked through my angst from that, I often say to her, darn you for using logic and reason to give me valid points that I should listen to, because often she's correct what she's saying, but this is the thing, we're also correct with what we're saying as well. I often believe we're trying to fight each other, saying that we're both wrong. We're different people. We're going to see things differently. Let's not focus on that, because that's kind of, there are differences. Let's focus on how we then fit together. That's kind of, let's get on the same page. We can be different people. We can have different views. Let's now look how we use that information,
Yeah. And it goes back to what we were saying about change as well. If I was to say, you're wrong, I'm right, and that's it, I think you've got to open up. It's like I said, you've got to embrace the change and think, well, actually, from their side, they think they're right. There's a reason to it. It's the empathy, isn't it? It's the old empathy card.
Absolutely. It's just the way I look at things. I think everyone is valid and everyone's right. You might be
right.
No, but I honestly do, because if you look at maths, 3 + 3 = 6. I mean, it's very factual. We can all agree on that. If you get it wrong, you've got it wrong. It's so factual. But when we're looking at people, we're so complex that everything we think has a reason. Everything we do has a purpose. It might not be helpful. It might not be logical. I might not agree with you. It might be unkind. But there's a reason why you do what you do. But if I go into a conversation thinking you're valid, I'm valid, let's find the common ground. Let's find, why are you doing these things? Let's have a look at that, They might have an epiphany just by talking, just by them going, well, I do this because actually it makes me feel better. Well, then you have that wonderful question, well, is this still benefiting your life? Is this something you want to continue doing? They're doing all the work. I don't have to do anything. Just by letting them talk,
Yeah.
They then can talk themselves around or not. They might not think, bugger you, I'll do what I'm doing. And then fair enough. Go with love. Do your rubbish elsewhere. It doesn't really matter to me if you don't want to, if you don't want to change. But yeah, I think that's where we fall down. I'm so busy telling you why you're wrong, which nobody's ever gone, okay, thank you for that, and now I'm going to change my opinion, change my life now you've said that. It never works like that. People don't just listen. I think that's the case. People don't just listen to other people's points of view. Because just because you listen to them doesn't mean you agree with them. It doesn't mean that you've sold your soul to the devil by listening to something.
And you look at some of the famous people in history and the people that have made a difference, and they're amazing at listening. They might not agree with you, but you watch them and they listen and they'll take in what you say. And there's something to be said about that. Instead of just throwing out your opinion and spouting, listening and understanding other people is a massive thing.
I often think, and this is an opinion, so people might not like this, but it's my my opinion. I often think the louder and more aggressive people are with their opinions, the less they actually know about the subject. I kind of believe that, because life is so complex, people's opinions are so complex, that to think that we've got a grasp on something, I think it's ridiculous. We're allowed strong opinions, of course you are. You're allowed passions, of course you are. But to go gun-ho saying everyone else is wrong, and it's a bit arrogant, I feel. Or maybe ignorant. Maybe it's ignorant. Maybe it's not knowing enough.
Yeah, true. Now, God, we could spend all day, but we haven't got all day. But one thing I did want to touch on is, I know when you do your counselling, you look at there's lots of different ways that you can counsel people, and there's lots of different ways of trying to help people. But one thing I always talk about, and I've talked to a lot of people on the podcast, is about why we should talk if someone is in a bad way, mental health wise. What would you say? Why is it so important for people to talk? Because, I'm a man. We always say men find it more difficult to talk, but I just think in general, even women sometimes think it's a weakness. I don't feel like I can talk. Why? What does a counsellor, going to a counsellor, do for us if we can talk to a counsellor?
Cool. And obviously different counsellors focus on different areas depending on sort of the type of counselling. But largely, just using my journey as an example there, largely it's about removing all the rubbish that we build up in our heads. The truth of the matter is we are fallible, we are fragile in some areas, we're vulnerable in some areas. We're human beings. We're not supposed to be perfect. We're not designed to, have your shit together. We're not designed in that way. We learn through failure. We learn through messing up and messing up often. That's how we learn. And what you find, or what I find, is people kind of grow up in two different ways. You either have this very supportive view of actually your worth is there no matter what you do. And then when you've got that opinion, you can look at behaviours, you can look at why you think things, you can have that sort of strong sense that I'm lovable while looking at those things. When you get emotions, when people die, when you lose your job, it doesn't crush your whole world, because actually I'm still lovable at a base level, if that makes sense. Other people grow up in families and ways where they feel their worth is based on what they do. Now, the problem with that is obviously when things go wrong, which is human and what happens, it's not just, we can't sit in the way that that's just life. We sit in a way of actually, this is us, we're bad, we're wrong, we must hide, we must protect, we must ignore, we must deny. That is where suffering comes from, Sort of, if we can just go back to find out who we are, building our lives to harness our needs, to work for our needs. And when we can just love ourselves for being a human, all that other stuff isn't there, So we still have difficulties in our lives. Shit still goes down, but you're dealing with the problem, you're dealing with the issue. You're not dealing with this mountain of self-doubt and loathing and beliefs and what other people are going to think about me. You're not dealing with all that rubbish, So hopefully, no matter what model of counselling you go to, hopefully the idea is to remove a lot of this stuff. You're not going to remove it all, obviously. We're complex, complex creatures, but to remove a lot of this. And the thing is, I use this saying quite a bit as well. There's always shit in life, You can have ankle deep shit, which is kind of okay. We can walk through that, quite comfortably. We can have neck high shit, which obviously is overwhelming. The hopes of counselling is we can offload some of this shit,
I like the analogy.
that's hopefully the thing. And just to working out, this isn't mine. This belief, that doesn't really belong to me. Actually, I'm living life in a way that it isn't good for me. Well, we can move that bit from my life. Just removing this shit makes it easy and easy as you go. There still will be shit in your life,
Yeah. And I think with the talking, we always have things swirling around in our mind, but when you can talk to someone, they can sort of clarify those feelings, because I might think something, but you could say to me, well, actually, that's because of something that happened here. And I'll go, I didn't even realise that, because subconsciously we've got a lot going on. But when we can talk to someone, they can sort of dissect it and look at it from an outside going in and say, well, actually, look at the, and that clarifies things. Whereas I think sometimes when you're in a bad mental health state, you can't clarify things. You're a bit all over the place.
Absolutely. What you're saying is so true. You're so spot on. The way our thoughts work is we treat them as fact. We don't question them as, we kind of go, well, we think it, so it's true. Ignoring the fact that that's rubbish, it's electrical signals and chemicals in our brain. It's nothing factual. So we can go for years thinking, I don't know what thought is, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, whatever the thought is, And actually just having someone say to you, are you sure about that? Like, let's actually look at the validity to this argument.
Yeah.
So you're saying that everybody in the world who isn't classically beautiful is ugly. Is that what you're saying to me? And then people think, hang on a minute, no, I'm not saying that. And that clarifying process. That's perspective changes everything. If you can face a problem in a different way, change your perspective, the outcomes are going to be different, So largely, if we can just change one little thing, the rest will almost take care of itself, I believe, in a lot of cases.
Yeah, definitely. Right, now I always ask my guests for a bit of advice. It can be the best bit of advice you've been given, or that you could give people that may be struggling or are looking for counselling. What sort of advice could you give us, Andrew?
Talk to people you trust. I say that all the time to people. It's not weak to ask. I mean, actually, it's quite courageous, I think, to ask for help. Because it's a vulnerable process. Change. It's a vulnerable process reaching out. But I think there's a trick to that as well. Ask the right people. Because obviously, if I say to my postman, "Hey, Posty, this is kind of my life," he might think, "Yeah, all right, mate. You're nuts." But asking the right people. And also, if people have got the space to help you, because a lot of people are so consumed with their own stuff that actually all they're waiting is for their turn to talk. They're not waiting to kind of, help and dissect and, So find those really deep connecting bonds to people that are really good and loving. They're the people to do this process with. And if you don't have them, don't worry, because there are counsellors. If you're not interested in counselling, there are Reiki practitioners, which are obviously more alternative medicine. If you don't like that, go to your priest, go to your rabbi, go to John down the road, who's always got time for a cup of tea and some biscuits. Whoever it is in your life, it doesn't have to be counselling. The important part is that connection and that ability just to voice things without fear of judgment. And in that process, you'll hopefully come to change your own mind and your own perspectives. Hopefully that's the process.